started there. Welcome everybody out there. I am John Dye with Rivers for Change, and I am thrilled to be here, thrilled, with Amy Byers, Emily Matthews, Brooke Ramsey, and Heidi. Heidi, I'm going to have trouble pronouncing your last name. I'm going to go a shot at Vertalanen. I don't know. Okay, I don't know if that's correct. You're going to correct me later. This is the Rivers for Change webinar revolved around competition, long distance competition, and I've had the privilege to paddle with each of these 4 women. I've only seen them from a distance because they've like gone over the horizon as I've tried to follow them and not been able to keep up. But I'm thrilled to hear their stories that are coming up about primarily the Yukon. But this race, this quest, this adventure, I think it pertains to a lot of other things in life, a lot of other things on the river, on land, and how we get through life and conquer and meet the challenges that face us. And I'm looking forward to how they interpret that, how they see that, overcome those challenges and meet those, and help us meet those. And I'm going to hand it over to Amy Byers at this point. Oh, and before I do, I want to remind you that you are watching this through Rivers for Change. And if you want to go to our Facebook page or our web page and hit that donate button so that we could do more of these in the future, I invite you to do that. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Amy. Amy Byers.
Thank you, John. It's wonderful to be here and get to talk about the Yukon River and the Yukon River Quest. It kind of has brought all of us women together in our own way, in our own interesting way. We have done the quest. I've done the River Quest 5 times, and I'll be telling you a bit about my story with that. I first want to do a little bit of just let you know a few things. One thing is we're going to just go from presentation to presentation. Each of our presentations will be around 15 minutes or so. And if you have any questions, ask them in the Q&A, but we'll do a discussion at the end with all of us together, asking questions and answering your questions. And if we can't get to them within the 15 minutes or 10 to 15 minutes that we have to do that, we're recording this and we'll get back to you later with the questions. And we may go a little over. There's a lot of good stuff that we have here. And I want these ladies to be able to take their time, and I want them to really get their stories out to you. So we may go about 10 after 6, and I just want to give you a heads up. So I'm going to share my screen now. And can everyone see that? Great. So I'm going to tell you my story. I first want to say, actually, I think I need to redo this. Sorry, it wasn't forwarding. Let me try this again. I hope this works now. Okay, there we go. Alrighty, so I do want to let you know that there's a ton of things we could talk about today, from nutrition to hydration to you name it. I think what is something that you can really get from us in a very real way is that we're just going to reveal to you our stories and how doing what we love and doing something hard in a beautiful place with the love and respect of nature, self, and other, how priceless that is. It really does lead to these lifelong, priceless gifts. I want you to get an understanding too of the magnitude of the Yukon. It is truly larger than life. Every single one of these animals that you see on this slide, I have come across in the Yukon and on the Yukon River, including this fella here, that's a wolverine. I literally saw a wolverine on the Yukon River, and I know I wasn't hallucinating due to sleep deprivation. I really did see it. And yes, there are these attack squirrels that you have to be aware of, but it's just a remarkable place. And now, where is that place exactly? Well, you think about it, we're right down here, us in terms of Emily and myself, we live way down here in Northern California, and Brooke and Heidi live over here in Calgary. And to give you a perspective, San Francisco to Whitehorse is approximately 2,500 miles. That's like going across the US. And Calgary to Whitehorse is about 1,500 miles. So you'd go through, when Emily and I go, if we're driving, we go through Oregon, Washington, through British Columbia, and we end up at the Yukon. When you look at this right-hand map here, and then you look over to the left-hand map here, your left, you'll see that, and this is Whitehorse and Dawson. So this is the Yukon here, and this is the Yukon in green, and then this is all of Alaska. And I just want to give you perspective on the source to sea aspect of the Yukon River. The source of the Yukon is the Atlin Lake, British Columbia. It's actually southern Atlin Lake. It's like there's a glacier, and so it goes from British Columbia through the Yukon Territory and all the way through Alaska and empties into the Bering Sea. The length of the Yukon River is about 1,982 miles, and that is equivalent to 3,190 kilometers. What about the Yukon River Quest, or the YRQ? It is 444 miles, and I showed you on the map Whitehorse to Dawson. That is the 444 miles. The race starts usually the last Wednesday in June at noon in Whitehorse, and it finishes by Saturday in Dawson City. It takes about 3.5 days, or you have to finish within those 3.5 days. There are 2 mandatory stops. There's a 7-hour stop in Carmax, which is considered the halfway point. And then there's a 3-hour stop in Coffee Creek. One of the great things about this race is the summer solstice. It allows you to paddle for 24 hours. With daylight, it's more like dusk at like 3 a.m. For a couple of hours, and then the sun comes back up. It's pretty amazing to be like midnight, and it's like noon on any given day in any other part of the year. It's completely self-supported except at the halfway point. Most other places, for example, like Coffee Creek, where there's the mandatory 3-hour stop, you can't get to. It's very remote. You can only get there by boat. That's how the volunteers get there, or by helicopter. The race, in terms of the age of the race, it's been going for 21 years. It would have been the 22nd year this year, except COVID hit, and they had to cancel the race this year, unfortunately. So I'm going to spend a little extra time on this, just a couple of minutes, because I really wanted you to get a feel for what's going on here when we're racing. This map, you can see Whitehorse here at the bottom, and then you can see up here is Dawson. This is pretty much the race course, and this map comes from the Whitehorse Daily Star. They love their race so much, and it's in the newspapers. It's pretty exciting for the Yukoners. This is a big deal, and it's really embedded in their culture. And they are truly some of the most interesting and warm people I've ever met in my life. So here, let's start at Whitehorse, and then I have these photos to kind of give you an idea. So you start at Whitehorse, the Le Mans start. You run about 400 meters, you come to the shore here where all the boats are lined up. You get in your boat, your support can help you, give you a little push, and that's it. You won't see them again until Carmax, which is about 187 miles later. and then you go off. Now the water's moving pretty quick, and you can see there's a lot of people lined up. So you got to be really careful coming out here. I've seen many a boat dump coming off the start. Then you go 24 miles and you hit the lake, Lake LaBarge. Now Lake LaBarge can get really worked up. It's the one place where you don't have any current assistance, and it's known for its winds, often in your face, and it's known for storms. Storms just suddenly pick up on this lake. So it's good times. I've only had 1 year where it's really been completely flat in my 5 years of doing this race. So when you get to Policeman Point, that's right at the mouth of Lake LaBarge. And here's a photo right here that my niece took this photo. She was able to get out to Policeman Point and take the photo. And it's so epic. You see this mountaintop, and you see the silhouette in the background, and you know you're going into something big. So then we continue on our trip, and 187 miles later, we're at Carmax. And Carmax has this, it's like the one place where there's this campground right off of the river. So once you take out, you drop your boat off. And this is picture right here is of what it looks like at Carmax when everybody's dropping their boats and there's clothes hanging and there's tents up. And so people, racers just camp here. Usually you want your support to set up the tent, get your food, have everything pretty much ready to go because you only have 7 hours and you want to maximize those 7 hours for rest. After you leave Carmax, after your 7 hours, you end up going through Five Finger Rapids. Now, Five Finger Rapids is probably about a class 2, but it's kind of a tricky waterway. You got to pick the right way to go through, which is you're coming from this direction on the photo, which is the top part of the photo, and you're going north. And then you'd go through this chute here on the right. And for kayaks, it's not as bad. There's a pretty good wave train that goes through there. But for canoes, mostly it's been canoes or Voyagers that I've seen dump through there. I've heard about dumping through there. And then you keep going, you end up at Coffee Creek, which is where the 3-hour layover is. That's about 331 miles. And then you keep going. And you, right here where I say braided area, now you see behind me the background that you initially saw behind me. Well, that's the braided area. This is one of the most technical parts of this race, is going through that braided area. It also can be really scary to go through there, especially alone. And it's for people who are really into technically reading the water, this is an exciting area. This is also an area where you can make or break your time. You can lose a lot of time through here because there's so many different channels, so many sloughs. So making the right decisions really matters. And then boom, you're in Dawson. 444 miles later. These pictures of the finish from Dawson are from when just last year in 2019 when I did the race. And here I am coming on my kayak, and here I am with John and my niece Mackenzie. John Dye, who just spoke, and my niece Mackenzie, who helped me get out of my boat. It was quite a chore to get out of my boat. All right, so now I want to give you a little overview with my story and give you a summary. I don't have a ton of time here, and some highlights from when I did it. So I did the race in 2003, 2004, 2005, 2017, and then in 2019. When I did the race in 2003, it was the first time I ever experienced kayaking. I learned to kayak on the Yukon River, literally. And some people may say, what the heck, how can you do that? Well, I had a background. I've been an endurance athlete ever since I was like 6 years old. I was doing 10Ks. Then I was doing marathons, running, cycling. I love the outdoors. I've been in backcountry. I've been in bear country. I've been to Alaska. I wasn't afraid of the environment. In fact, I was captivated by it and drawn to it. The thing for me was the paddling. And then when my friend Danise called me and asked me if I wanted to do it, and she had paddling experience, and she said, well, you could just, you can float with the river. I thought, well, okay, that's a great idea. I'm in a beautiful environment and I get to float with the river. Well, I realized there was more to it than that. And so it was a wake-up call for me. And I did do a little bit of paddling beforehand. I think I went out like 3 times with friends of mine who said, you better learn to get in a kayak and actually have some sort of experience paddling. So yeah, so our team name was ABD squared, which is that's all but dissertation squared. We named ourselves that because we both were in graduate school. I was in Connecticut at Yale, and my friend Danise Kimball, who I did it with in 2003, 2004, and 2005, she was at UCLA, it's the University of California, Los Angeles. And we thought it was pretty fun to call ourselves ABD squared. We were trying to figure out how to get there. And as you saw from my map, it can be really challenging to get there. And then you have to think about getting a boat. So what we did is we thought, we're smart. We'll do a full boat. We'll do a foldable kayak, put it in our luggage, get on a plane, and just fly there. Well, yeah, that was a bit of a mistake. That boat was like a barge. Plus it was raining, and raining the entire time. It was wet and cold. The boat took on all the cold. It took on all the elements. Danise was actually sitting in water. I was in the front. It wasn't as bad for me, but I did start to go hypothermic, and we had to get off. It was at the lake. We had to get off the lake and take care of that. We kept changing socks, wool socks, fleece, you name it. And people kept dropping out of the race. 50% of the field scratched that year. There were about 30 paddlers. We were the only female tandem kayak team. The officials were taking bets we'd never make it. Well, we finished, and we finished in our sleeping bags. We literally only had our sleeping bags, and that's what this photo is here. You can see Danise holding her sleeping bag. I think my bag's here. Oh, I think we used also our space blankets. And and keep in mind, in those years, then there was no GPS, no spot. We just had our maps, our hard maps. And we didn't even have a satellite phone or anything. So then in 2004, 2005, we went back. And I loved it there, despite, what I'm telling you about how hard it was. It's a magical place for me. And we decided, let's get a decent boat. So we got a Valley-Alute. So in 2004, we did it in our Valley-Alute fiberglass boat. Our team name, I think our team name was Blister Sisters that year, but we were late on getting it documented. That year in 2004, there were a lot of wildfires, and there was a lot of smoke on the river. In fact, the majority of the time. And there were trees burning on either side. I don't think they would have run the race now in conditions like that. We kept wetting our bandanas and putting our bandanas around our mouths, and it was pretty freaky going through there, and really eerie and apocalyptic to just go through there. But we did learn something wonderful, that the silt against the boat made this shh sound that got louder and louder and louder, and we didn't hear it in 2003 because the canvas absorbed that sound. But in 2004 and 2005, we heard that. Then in 2005, our new name was Separation Anxiety. And the most thrilling thing that happened with us in 2005 was more and more, the race was becoming more and more popular with pro paddlers. And it also was our fastest year. I think we did it in like 59 hours that year. But then in like 2012, our record was beat by a women's tandem team that did it in 47 hours. Then in 2017, so between graduating from graduate school, doing a postdoc, I ended up back in California. And I ended up starting to do some racing, kayak racing in like 2015. I met Elaine Badem. Elaine's right here. You see her here in this photo. She's with Emily. And then in 2017, Emily was the inspiration for all of us. A group of us from Northern California decided, hey, let's go do the Yukon River Quest. And Emily was the initiator of that. The group was, you can see all of us here. I know there were others from Northern California too, but this is the cohort that the folks that I knew among my community. There was Elaine and myself, Emily, Todd Bowers, Jeff Kay were in a tandem canoe, and then Carter Johnson and Dave Jensen were in tandem canoe as well. This also was a year that we were going to go for the gold. Our team name was Paddle Like a Girl. In the Whitehorse Daily Star, they were advertising it like this was a good condition year. People were going to do well. People were going to get records this year. And they also, in terms of who to watch in the paper, they actually put my name and Elaine's name and our team name, Paddle Like a Girl, that we were a team to watch. Unfortunately, Elaine had an injury that arose where her arm swelled up and everything turned black and blue. And by the time we got to Coffee Creek, it was really bad. And it was advised by medical that we stop and scratch from the race and have an air of evacuation out. And so a helicopter had to come to they were just going to take Elaine out, but luckily I was able to get on the helicopter. Otherwise, I was going to end up staying in Coffee Creek for a couple of days, which would have been horrible. But it was an incredible helicopter ride. It was so beautiful. In the end, Elaine had muscle tears in her arm, but it was definitely the right decision. And I learned a lot about self-care that year and intensity and seriousness of the racing. Then in 2019, I did it solo. It was my solo year last year. I decided I am just going to approach this as a vision quest. This is a new thing for me, doing it solo. I borrowed a boat from Danise, this Tideline 19 boat, a beautiful boat made by Ono Paddles. My support was my niece, Mackenzie Holland, right here in this photo at the bottom. We decided it's always, how to get up there. I've driven, I've flown. This time I did the Inside Passage, which was epic. It was wonderful. It was like 3 days on the ferry of rest to get there. We drove to Bellingham, got on the ferry got to Skagway, and Skagway to Whitehorse is a couple hour drive. It was wonderful. Best decision I made. And then afterwards I had rest time as well. And I thought I was going to be alone the whole time. And I wasn't. That's when I met these ladies right here who you're going to get to hear from. I met Brooke and Heidi. And then I also met these wonderful ladies in this Voyager Echo Kraken, and they were fabulous. So in my last slide, I want to share something with you. The Yukon is a place that's so near to dear to my heart. The race is so near and dear to my heart. And this photo here is from when the Echo Kraken took this photo of me. And I was inspired yesterday to write. One of the secrets of me is I like to write poetry. And I was inspired to write a poem yesterday. And so I wanted to share it with you. There is a place. It's a place with lots of space. It's a place that accepts me. It's a place that knows me. It's a place that loves me. It's a place that speaks to me and me to it. It's a place that connects me and me to it. And at the end of the day, I realize it's more than a place. I realize it's more than a race. And at the end of the day, I realize the Yukon River, the larger than life source to see, just connected me to me. Thank you. All right, Emily.
Okay, let's quickly share my screen. Amy, thank you. That was an amazing introduction to the river, that race. I mean, that, when I give my USCon presentations, I usually do a lot of that stuff. But Amy, that was a great introduction to the river and the race and all of it. My story is people ask me, like, how did you get, like, I was not an endurance racer. I was not a racer. My athletic experience ended in 3rd grade when I stopped playing soccer. I was in and out, I'd do a little bit of exercise here and there, but I was not in any stretch, which you would think I was an athlete. So when people hear that I was going to do this, it's just like, wait, what? so excuse me, hold on a second, sorry. So what brought me here? It was the classic hockey stick that you usually think of in business, but for me, it was a very quick thing, and I think it was a lot of things came together that made me fall in love is I loved water. I always paddled on vacation. I went to summer camp and I loved canoeing and kayaking, but none of this was something that I ever thought that I could do on my own. You know, so when I met this thing, all of these things came together to really hook me in. So before I met stand-up paddling, this was my water sports activity, just mostly lollygagging. My experience on rivers was in an inner tube with beer in Texas, so very far from the Yukon. This is when I first met paddleboarding. My husband, we'd gone on vacation with our neighbors, and we were going to get kayaks. My husband's like, "Oh, we should try these stand-up paddleboards." And I'm like, "This water, it's like snow melt, so it's about 25 degrees." I'm like, "You must be the biggest idiot on earth to think that I'm going to get on some stand-up thing and fall in that freaking ice cold water." But anyway, I got convinced, and so I got on one of these, which in retrospect really looks like someone had just put like a smasher on a plastic kayak. I got on it, and I mean, in 2 strokes, I was hooked. Tim was on his knees, kind of enjoying it, got up, but I was like across this lake. I was thinking this was the greatest thing I've ever experienced. So, but I kind of knew that this wasn't a real paddleboard after I got home and did a little looking around. So I went to Tahoe and tried a real paddleboard, and then it was really, this was heaven. I knew that I had pretty much found my thing. But I'm really big into negotiating with myself. So I made this deal with myself. I had been trying to do this, like I had never run also, by the way, ever in my life. Like in PE in high school, I used to get the F on the running days because I wouldn't run. So I'd gotten in my head that I was going to do this couch to 5K thing. And for like a year, on and off, I'd try. And I never could. Something would come up and I would fall out of it. So I wanted to paddleboard very badly. So I did the 8-week couch to 5K thing. I did in 3 weeks. And I bought this ridiculous board here. It was a Costco kind of foam kickboardish paddleboard, but it was mine. It took about 2 days of paddling on that to realize that this was not a real paddleboard. So then I started Googling and I saw the really pretty, I mean, it was bamboo and it was beautiful. And it was a little 10-6 little playboard. And that quickly I realized that wasn't good. So I made more negotiating with myself. I had to paddle so many miles, and then I got to upgrade to more real boards. And then that led into, you need a board, a different one. And now I have a garage. It's fairly insane. But this is when I first started. I was paddling. I told, I paddle everywhere. Paddled in Foster City, in the little lagoon in San Mateo, in the estuary, in the 101 Canal in San Rafael. I thought I was so cool because I was going to all these places and I was a paddler. And by the way, so I'm paddling all this time for like these first few months so I got my board in September. And so between September and December, when I met Michael Melville, I was paddling with my paddle backwards because I had no idea what I was doing. And Michael Melville, I didn't know, but I met in a little group thing. And he said, "Sweetheart, you need to turn it." And I was like, okay. So that was about a week before I got I'd been Googling everything. I heard about this race. And it's like, we're going to go from Fort Baker to San Rafael. It's 13 miles, but it's called Ride the Tide. And the tide's going to help you. So you got to remember, like a week before this race, I learned to turn my paddle the correct way. So God knows I have no idea what made me think I was going to be able to do this thing, but I believed in the tide. My husband, I told my husband, I'm like, "Oh, there's going to be because I called David Wells who was putting it on, and he said, "Yeah, there's going to be like a 3-knot push." And I'm like, "Excellent. That's great." So I tell my husband this, and he looks at me and he says, "Emily, do you know what a knot is?" And I was like, "Well, of course I do." Of course, quickly ran downstairs to Google that. Anyway, it was 13 miles. It was the first time they put on this race. And all of us are out here. It's 40 degrees and drizzling rain and really just terrible weather and windy. Anyway, but a bunch of us went and we all finished. And by some miracle of God, I wasn't last. I finished the damn thing. It's sort of towards the end, but anyway, but all of us that did it, we were all none of us had done obviously this race. and I made friends, and it was like, oh my God, there are other people out here that want to do this, which, you know, that was pretty cool. Then I found out about all these other little races, which really for me meant I can go to places like Angel Island or around the bay and have other people, you know, have someone there looking, so to make sure I don't kill myself. So that set off most of 2013, 14. You know, so it's basically 3 months. I just became this fanatical stand-up paddleboarder, and you know, was not fast, by the way. I just went out and did it. And here it is. I mean, speak of it. This is St. Patrick's Day, and instead of being, you know, with my neighbors and friends drinking beer and playing St. Patrick's Day, I was out racing. Of course, all frocked up in lipstick. Which I saw that picture, I was just cringing. Anyway, one thing led to another, and I got into the Tahoe races, and someone told me that there was this race. It was 14 miles on the lake, which there was no tide and there was no help. It was just flat water, but what the hell, it was pretty. It was really pretty. So I did this one. It was from El Dorado Beach around Emerald Bay, into Emerald Bay and back. It was very bad. It was boat chop, wind. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I went back and had a friend taught me about boat chop and all that. And so I was able to do that. And it was like, well, cool, if I can do 14 miles in boat chop, what the hell, why not 22? Let's just go all the way across the lake. And people were like looking as if I had completely taken leave of my senses, especially when they saw this picture at the end. What preceded this was about, I don't know, 65 attempts by the Coast Guard to get me into their boat. And I kept saying, like, do I have to? And they're like, no. And so I kept going, and I did finish. So then I was like, cool, that's awesome. Look at that. I can do 22 miles. So then a friend told me about this other, started rumbling about this long endurance race on a river. I didn't know anything about rivers, but what I did know was this was a long race, and it was going to require, like, I had to get up my game. So not running, I had been trotting around with my little 5K. I signed up for a 15K and finished that. That was in hot chocolate race. And then I thought, well, I should probably keep going. So I ran this half marathon with, I think, about 24 other people in Pescadero, unmarked. And you ran, I completed it, and I was not last. I beat out a 94-year-old, and I got an artichoke. So yay me. But that was how I prepared for this monster, the Cal 100. And I Rivers for Change put this on for 4 years. I did it for 3. It's a 100-mile race on the Sacramento River, and it was that I blame Rivers for Change for getting me to the Yukon, or blame and thank. I don't know. My family probably blames them, but this race. This was it, and it was not just for me. It was a whole bunch of us did this, and the thought that I could do it was just mind-boggling. But you know, people got together and we trained, and we did it, and you know, it's like, oh my God, you can paddle 100 miles. So then I have to say, this might be a frenemy. I get this email someone sends. It's like, and all I see is they let your people enter, and I'm like, wait a second, who, what, sups, river? Yes, that sounds good. So of course I click the link. Well, then I see this. I mean, this is what Amy was showing all before. This is Lake Labarge, and I thought, hell yeah. I mean, of course I'm going to do that. Well, literally the phone's ringing like 2 seconds after I sent the email, like, I'm in, saying, like, Emily, did you notice the parts that it's 444 miles and you really aren't stopping very much? And I was like, what could go wrong? I mean, but I went. For stand-up paddle boards in 2016, they recruited 12 people from around the world, the top paddlers that would consider doing a race like this. They brought in 12 and 9 finished, and that was enough for the race board. They decided, okay, well, you maniacs, if you think you can do it, let's see what you can do. So they opened it up to us, and 17 was the first year they let stand-ups do it. I am proud to say that of the 3 women that started, me, Joanne, and Oh my gosh, I lost her name, Markle. Anyway, we all finished, which was super cool. But I mean, these people, what an amazing group. I mean, the support of everyone getting ready, like going in the last preparations, was just remarkable. People did, they thought we were from Mars. I mean, we were at the registration we're here, well, they're starting. We started, but people thought we were nuts. They're like, what in the hell are you doing? And where are you going to put all your stuff? Well, turns out you can put all this, 48 hours. You had to be able to survive in the wild on your own for 48 hours with a stove and backpack, I mean, sleeping bags and tents and a crazy list of equipment. But there I am. That's me leaving. That tail is, we had to wear leashes, which you usually don't wear on a river, but for this we did. And there I am, just off I go. And by the way, I was not a wilderness girl. I've camped maybe outside maybe 4 times in my life, and that was with people organizing it. So this was again, back to like, why did I think I could do it? I have no idea, but I guess I'm just stubborn. So off I go. People think why, like, and this is why. I mean, we showed you pictures as well. I mean, this place is magical. I mean, this is in the beginning, in the first 25 miles, and it's just so peaceful and beautiful. Even LaBarge, I mean, Lake LaBarge is a monster, but even there, for me, it's I mean, I'm slow, and it is a long lake. I was out there for, gosh, many hours, but it's captivating. And then once you cross the lake, you come into these high walled areas of the river, and it's for me, I crossed the lake right around midnight, so the sun had it was dusky, and you're in these weird canyons with these rocks everywhere, and the faces, the rocks looked like faces. I wasn't really hallucinating. I mean, you just seriously look at them, and they're all frowning at you, every one of them angry. This was a photograph I found, a painting I found in Dawson, but pretty much everyone, I think, will attest to these rocks are mad, and everyone sees these nutty faces. And Carmax, I mean, Carmax, for me, I paddled. By the time I got to Carmax, I had been on the water for 33 hours without sleeping. This was pretty, I mean, looking at it objectively, it really looks like not, I mean, it looks kind of awful, honestly, but for me, this was heaven. And I will never, ever be able to thank Amy Byers enough for telling me not to sleep at Carmax. Yes, you can camp there, as she said, but you can also camp at the Hotel Carmax that has hot shower and microwave and a bed. That's the way to roll, definitely. But you know, we're there for 7 hours, so I slept about 5. And I'll tell you what, you're like, oh my God, sweet, 144, like to Coffee Creek. That's only like a Cal 100 and a half. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. And this is how, I mean, this is inspiring to me. I mean, this is how I left. Like when I left Carmax at whatever, 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm paddling into this. And that was very motivating to keep rolling. And it's just, you can see it's so isolated, but it's incredibly beautiful. It does, as she said, you start getting more islands and channels as you head towards Coffee Creek. This now, I'm going to just full out say, Coffee Creek, it's not even that you're tired. This place is from hell. The second, again, Amy told us, when you're on the water, put on gloves, put on a mosquito hat, and just pray. Because when you land, like the mosquito hat was completely covered with mosquitoes. But the volunteers are incredible. They meet you, they take your boat up, and they have this tent. I don't know if the others had been in there. You can bring your own tent and set up your own tent, but you only have 3 hours. And I just thought, I'm so tired. I just crawled in there, and there are a bunch of snoring boys, and those are rock next to me that as I was trying to fall asleep, I had probably bad thoughts about these people in that rock. But the tent was amazing, and that you put a tag with your number, and they come and wake you up. You tell them what time to wake up, and they come. And the first year, this little child came and he patted me. Would you like some coffee? And I thought, yeah, I'm dreaming, and sure, I'll play along. I'm like, what can I have in my coffee? And he said, anything. I'm like, sugar and cream? He's like, of course. So I go back to sleep. And like 2 seconds later, this little guy that looks like my son shows up with his steaming hot cup of coffee. And I thought, okay, maybe this place isn't hell. Maybe it really is heaven. And then you go, and now you've only got 113 miles left, which is like barely over a Cal 100. So how hard can that be? Well, turns out if you thought Coffee Creek was hell, it gets worse. I mean, in here, this is the silty part that Amy was talking about. There's this hissing on your board. It's like that. So as you're trying to navigate these channels and figure out what you're doing, which looks obvious from the sky, but when you're down on the water and you've got this hissing and you're delirious, it was that this was a really, the last part was tough. About the last 60 miles, I think, was just the really brutal part. And you're just thinking, okay, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to go and make all these negotiations. I would negotiate with myself for treats. So if you go another, and then the metrics were crazy. It would be like, go 25 miles and you can have a river burger. Or, I mean, it was nuts. But then there you are, and here it is, Shangri-La. I mean, this place could have been the Taj Mahal. You see this and you're like, thank you, God, and every other deity out there, because I have made it to Dawson City. And again, looking at this picture, you're like, it's not so snazzy, but the most amazing thing ever to get there and realize that you finished it, the race, and your friends were there. It was really pretty amazing. Look, I'm happy. I mean, I see this picture. I've been paddling for almost 70 hours with about 7 hours of sleep. And I look at that and I'm like, I'm not even like relieved. I don't know. I was pretty stoked. Like I think I was pretty surprised that I actually did it. And I mean, what's interesting about this is I have on all these clothes and I couldn't figure it out. And I think what happened is I just got so tired that I couldn't take anything off. And I loved this. Anyway, it was absolutely incredible. It was so good that I decided it would be a brilliant idea to do it again. Again, like this is where I'm surprised the straitjackets didn't come out. But the second year I did it, I found out the day before that I was the only girl. There were only 4 subs that started, and I was the only girl out there. And I thought, oh Jesus, well, I really gotta step up it for my people. But the coolest thing of all is the Mounties are usually there, and there were 2 girl Mounties that sent us off, the sup people. So that was super cool. And I finished it a second time, and I still look happy. My board's a lot more messy than the first year, but anyway, I finished it, and I think through the whole, like the second year was much harder. There was a terrible storm along the way, and by the end I was extremely unhappy. But you know, there's something incredible about you just keep going, and then you look around you and something about the place inspires you, or you see bird, or you see you know, some creature, and it keeps you going. And to complete something that grand is just, you know, something you don't think you could do and you do it is just pretty cool. So onward, yeah. Next, I don't know. Everybody asks me what's next. I want to go back to the Yukon. Maybe next year if I can get in with the the registration is very competitive, and there's the rolling over, so I don't know about that. But I don't know. Looking for maybe not race adventures, but just straight up long outdoor river adventures. So that's my story, and thanks for coming. Let me give the screen back.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. Wow. I don't know about you, Heidi, right now. I'll just say before I start sharing the screen, I'm like, we got to get back on the water. This is so exciting hearing Amy and Emily's stories. Thank you so much. So, my goodness. We're going to share a little bit with you, Heidi and I, about how we've done the Yukon River Quest as a team. And there are, you know, really special things that happen on the water together and the preparation together when you decide to take on a big challenge like this as 2 people, 2 very unique individuals. And we're going to share a little bit about what motivated us. So the decision to do this race, we've done it twice together. We're going to share some stories from our 2018 experience and our 2019 experience, and then just kind of some reflections on, wow, we did this. It's amazing. Which I'm already I'm like in that energy right now after getting to hear the race stories from Amy and Emily. So I'm feeling so good. So I'm going to pass, Heidi and I'll kind of switch back and forth. I'll be handling the slideshow. So I'm just going to, before I pass to her, kind of share my perspective on the deciding to do it. My parents have competed in the Yukon River Quest multiple times, and they had done it 2 times before I had done it, and I had gone up and been their support crew, or maybe they'd raced 3 times, yeah, and I'd supported twice. And so you saw at Carmax, and you saw at the start line, and you heard some stories from Amy about support crew. And I was support crew. So I got to see the race from that side first, which was really amazing. And then when Heidi kind of presented, maybe we could do this together, I thought, wow, I've seen my parents go through some amazing personal changes. Maybe I'd like to do something like that. And like Emily, I'm kind of a say yes person. Oh yeah, I can do anything, so let's go for it. So that was kind of my reason for doing it personally. And I'll pass to you now, Heidi.
Thanks, Brooke. So before my first YRQ, so my first one was in 2017, and I wasn't really a paddler before that. So my dad is a dragon boater on the Canadian senior dragon boat racing team, and one of his best friends on his team, Wayne Gregory, was also very involved in the marathon paddling community in Ontario. And he had always told my dad that the Yukon River Quest was his favorite race that he had ever done. So it kind of just stayed in my head. I always thought my dad and I would do it together one day. But I'm a pretty outdoorsy person, and I had floated the idea to a few of my friends. I'm not incredibly competitive, but it just seemed like a fun adventure to take, was my perspective. And I was in Ottawa and catching up with a friend from high school, and she asked if I remembered in high school when I made her do a local marathon race called the Marsh Mash. And I said no, and she reminded me that we came dead last and our prize was a bag of carrots from the marsh. So I told her I didn't remember that, but asked if she had heard of the YRQ as a joke. And she just kept hounding me about it and was pretty serious about it. And registration, she reminded me when registration day was, and we signed up. And then Brooke and I kind of knew each other through work a little bit, and a mutual friend I was telling about the race when I had signed up told me that her parents had done it several times. So I said, I need to talk to them immediately. So Carla and Steve were amazing, and I don't think we would have finished as well if it weren't for their help. So they helped with training, with figuring out logistics, with providing maps. They lent us a boat to use for the race, and now I call Steve and Carla my paddle parents. But they were a huge support. So Kelly and we just wanted to do it, and we had a really good race and finished that year. And in the meantime, Brooke and I had been trying to organize a day to paddle together, and we had to cancel it. And in that phone conversation, we said, hey, why don't we do the race next year? And that fell into place as well. So here on this page, Brooke pulled up our old racer bios kind of to highlight how our goals changed between the 2018 and 2019 races. So 2018, our goal was to finish the race, of course, and to do as well as we could. You can advance, thank you. And it's interesting to see how our aims really changed in 2019. And I think after the experience that we went through together in 2018, and how much respect that, well, speaking for myself anyway, respect that I gained for Brooke, and wanting to, it's extra motivation to want to do well as a team, but also for your partner. And I think that's reflected in our goals here, that all of our goals were about doing better as a team. And this is a funny slide. So anyone who knows us would say, and I always tell everyone, that we are completely different people. And to be completely honest, I don't know if I've said this to you before, Brooke, so now you'll hear it. But I was even wondering how we would get along for 60 hours or so in a boat, and if that would be problematic, because we are so different. And so ISTP, so these are Myers-Briggs personality types, and Brooke and I have been chatting about them recently and learning about each other. But we are really different personalities, and I think that that's such a strength for us as our team in the race, because we have different opinions on things, and we can have, which is good, you have a lot of time to chat in the race and to talk out different options and come to conclusions. Also helpful with our planning. I think I'm more of a structured, organized planner, and Brooke's really good at thinking on her feet, and you have to do that a lot in a race like this. I think in terms of actually getting through the race, I think I'm pretty consistent and can keep us moving perpetually. And Brooke, she's more fiery and has these big surges of energy. So I think that I can help pull us along the whole time, but then Brooke gets really fiery and competitive, and when Brooke wants to go, then I want to kick it up for Brooke. So I think it makes us a faster team because of that. And just in terms of dividing tasks in the boat, it's really helpful because some things are a chore. And I would say an example I can give is our navigating. So I have the maps in the front usually, or Brooke has maps as well, and we both have a GPS, and Brooke is constantly monitoring our speed and trying to find the fastest water for us to be in, as well as making sure we're not slacking off. And she stares at that thing to try and figure out exactly how we're doing and if we can be doing better and if we need to move where the boat is at. And that would drive me absolutely nuts to do. I would be wondering, is this us? Like, do we need to kick it up? Is the river just slower here? So I think Brooke's ability to focus on that is super valuable. And then in the front of the boat, my GPS, I'm looking at the actual course, and I do most of the map navigating because Brooke has a tendency to think we're doing better than we are and be a page or two ahead. So I think that our very different personalities have come together really well and made us a really strong team and a really strong friendship.
Yeah, and as you can see, one of the things that bonds us is we like to eat like athletes. This is like an 11 p.m. McDonald's meal on the way to a training camp. So we're really fueling ourselves well. Heidi got a salad, so that's great. So we have a sense of humor together, which serves us well on the boat. And I don't know if Heidi's going to talk about this when she shares some 2018 experiences, but I have really good jokes and make her laugh a lot. So that'll come out probably. If she doesn't say it, I said it. And then I share, here we're together, rain or shine. So we've been out in the snow together paddling at the Glenmore Reservoir in Calgary, is where we get a lot of miles in, and Heidi really hates it. It's really not as beautiful as the Yukon, but it makes the Yukon even more amazing when we get there. So we're going to share significant moments from our 2018-2019 race. I agree with what Emily said. Amy gave such a great outline of the race itself. And so we're going to highlight some interesting kind of bits that happened for us and see what comes up. So I'll let Heidi share about 2018.
Thank you. So this is a picture of us on the lake, and we had a beautiful year on the lake this year. It was really calm and beautiful and sunny, and we were able to really appreciate our surroundings, which when things get painful, that can be hard to do. And yeah, our goal this year was just to do well, and we felt really strong on the lake. And I think memories that stick out from the lake in 2018 was just meeting other boats and having good conversations with people. And sometimes it's motivating to help you'll want to catch the next boat, and chatting with people can help pass the time, and it is a race where there is time to do that. So we met a lot of really memorable, great people on the lake that year. and then juxtaposition to this lovely photo from the night. And as everybody has spoken to, the first day to get to that first geographic stop it's just so much time on the water. It's really hard for everybody. You have to be awake and paddling for an obscene amount of time. And coming into the beginning of the night, I think we were in pretty good spirits. This is where Brooke thinks she had some good jokes going. I was glad because she was awake and alert. They weren't great though, Brooke, I'm sorry. But in the wee hours of the morning, we both really struggled. And I think every year I've done the race, that's been the hardest part for me. It's just having to be awake for too long. And then also in juxtaposition to our experience on the lake, this night we were alone for most of the night, and that gets harder. And we were both struggling. We were both really tired, and we weren't really communicating because we were both in a low at the same time, which is the good thing about being a partnership is that often one of us will be having a bad moment when the other isn't, and it can help get you through it. But we were both really suffering for a long time and thinking pretty negatively. The last few hours coming into Carmax, it was so hot and we just wanted to get there. And Brooke had said that the thoughts running through her head were, my parents are going to be so disappointed. I can't believe they lent us this boat, and we have to be the slowest team out here. And that's, I felt the same, and we weren't talking about that because that's not super constructive, and we were both so spent we weren't communicating all that much anyway. But yeah, the first night was really difficult, and we were very happy to get into Carmax. When we got to Carmax, Brooke's parents really, really boosted our mood and told us how well we were doing, which we were shocked by, and that just seeing people and having support is so wonderful. And just having your support crew there to help guide you when you're in a zombie-like state, getting you to your shower, to your food, getting you to bed. And we both had an amazing sleep, and we woke up feeling really excited to get back on the water. So when we left Carmax, we gained so much time. It felt like we were starting a brand new race. And for me, each year that I've done the race, the bit from Carmax to Coffee Creek is, I think it's the most beautiful, and I've felt the best through that section. But yeah, so we were really fast and have some really great memories of listening to music to help us get a boost of energy. And it's random songs our favorite song that really pumped us up was How to Save a Life by The Fray, which doesn't really seem like much of a pump up song, but just great memories from feeling really happy with our performance in that stage. And it was a hot day, so learning to dip our hats in the lake, and Brooke kept saying, I feel like a new woman every time she would cool herself down. And then the last few hours, or I guess you can advance it now, I think. The last few hours coming into Coffee Creek, we saw these big storm clouds coming in, and we were in a pretty major thunderstorm for, I'd say, 2 or 3 hours before Coffee Creek. And we got absolutely soaked, and you have to stop at this part. So it's not a great photo, but I paddled barefoot, so I had shoes in the boat, but I ended up just trudging around in the mud at this rest stop. But this having to stop added some challenges to us because we were wet, so we had to change our clothes. So we put on a new set of clothes to go to sleep in. Our clothes got a bit wet while we were sleeping, so we changed again to get back in the boat when we headed out. And at that point we had used all of our clothes, and logistically there was some complications. So there was nowhere to hang anything, which I don't know that should be a requirement, but our rain gear never dried out and there was nowhere to put it. So it was soaked all the way through to the point that we didn't use our raincoats for the rest of the race. And it was still raining when we headed out again. So it definitely added a challenge and some issues for us to work through we had periods where we were feeling really tired and we couldn't take a break because then we would get too cold in the night. It was raining all through the night and it's very cold in the nighttime. So as a team, kind of chatting that through, while our options are, we can either stop and like properly rest, but like set up a shelter so that we aren't hypothermic, or we have to just keep paddling. And obviously we weren't going to stop paddling. So I think it really helped, in a way, helped with our time. But, oh, and another funny story from this stop, Brooke had changed her, she had put on long johns for the last stretch of the lake, or of the race. And as a girl in the boat, it's complicated to take your pee breaks in the boat. So Brooke took scissors to her long johns and she meant to cut just an opening in them, but she ended up cutting, making assless pants basically. So that'll come into play in a moment. And so this is us at the end. Oh, and coming in at the end of this race, I was saying to Brooke, you know what, like the ending last year for me was so special because your parents were so excited and proud of me, but now you're their actual daughter and you're going to steal my thunder, and as you should. And we got to the end and I got out of the boat and I think Brooke's dad gave me a hug right away, and Carla was there, and then I was getting all this attention. Then I was kind of like, where's my partner? Where's Brooke? And she's still sitting in the boat. So I did get all the initial love from her parents. But the reason is that Brooke was nervous to get out of the boat because she had nothing covering her bum. So she had to wait for another support crew member to get a nice orange garbage bag for her to cover herself up.
Yes.
And this photo is just showing us, all of our wounds at the end of the race. I would say that because of all of the weather and issues, I was in a negative space for a lot more in this race than my other years. And then 2 hours after the race, we're already planning for next year. So you forget the pain really quickly.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. 2019, our experience on the lake was very different than it had been in 2018. Oh my goodness, sorry. Let me see here. Very different. Really had a big storm come up while we were on the lake. Amy talked about how they can just like arrive and leave. But this storm, really took a lot out of us. A lot out of me physically and mentally, because mentally, a lot of attention has to be paid just to like keep the boat upright. So our paddles have to be in the water. I'm, worried about us keeping even, keeping straight. And so I'm, making these decisions about when we're going to hut. That's actually where our name Huptown Girls is, because we in the boat when we're in the canoe, and when I call a switch from side to side, I'll say hup. And, we were so taxed, or it was very taxing. I don't think felt taxed during the situation, but it'll come in later, like just how exhausting this experience was. And this is actually the only time I've ever been mad at Heidi in all of our time together. At the end of the lake, there's a kind of where we move from the lake into the river, there's like a lot of swells that come up. And so you'll kind of be in this experience of like up and down. And so for like stand-up paddlers and kayakers, that can actually be really beneficial because it'll like kind of pick them up and send them along and can increase speed. And Heidi thought this was so fun because the water was churning so much. We just come out of the storm and she's in the boat in the front, and I just see her going, wee, wee. And I'm watching, as she mentioned, the GPS, I'm watching, and our speed is just being like demolished. We're going so slow. And I'm like, stop saying wee, like this isn't fun. This isn't good. And so we still joke about how our biggest drama was me being exhausted from the lake and being upset that Heidi was having so much fun on these swells. She kept saying like, oh, we're surfing. And I was like, I don't want to be surfing. I want to go fast. I want to start getting the benefit of the river after being on this tumultuous lake for so long. So in between the 2018 and 2019 race, I've been thinking, how am I going to say this? I went through a lot of health issues with my mental health, and was diagnosed with bipolar and ended up being on medications for bipolar disorder. So to speak to a little bit of this too, and I think to our team, you know, Heidi was the first person at the hospital when I got admitted to the hospital, and was like a huge support of me figuring out medication, trying different stuff, you know, figuring out my rest. Just, it was a huge learning experience in that year when we weren't between the races. So it was a really good bonding experience for us. But one of the kind of fears or struggles, stresses I had between the two races was the medication I was taking affects my sleep. And as you've heard, we have the 7-hour mandatory stop and the 3-hour mandatory stop. Well, if I take the medication, I'm not gonna be able to wake up in 5 hours or 2 hours. I won't have control. So I ended up getting off the medication to figure out how am I gonna manage sleep in the boat, all this stuff. So just kind of to give, I mean, there's lots I could say about it, but to give an idea of one of the challenges that I had already kind of worked myself up about before the race. And then after that experience on the lake and how tiring it was, I really, really struggled for what felt to me like a huge portion of the rest of the race. Struggling in terms of, like, I would just get these uncontrollable crying fits, and I like would still be paddling, but back there just feeling like I couldn't get my head on straight. And I share that because I think, and I've done some reading about other people who do endurance racing, like ultramarathon running and stuff, like it does mess with our heads. We're sleep deprived. You know, even if my mental health was in tip-top shape, it would have been problematic. So Heidi had to deal with that for many hours. It felt like for me forever. And not only, you know, was she like a super big help, she also, and I think this is a part of the partnership, knowing when to be kind of gentle and calm, like everything's gonna be okay, and then knowing like when to go, like, come on, let's fucking go. I'm not gonna apologize for my F word. Okay, I was going to, but is really important in the team perspective. We also got to connect with teams during kind of this second half, what I would consider like the hard part of the race for me. As we were going through some major storms, we had like major wind, and I was having a lot of trouble keeping us going straight, getting super frustrated, and then getting like, oh my God, I can't believe the lake just took all this out of me. I'm so upset. And so seeing other teams, having someone to be like, hey, like, let's freaking go, was super beneficial. And I shared this photo on the left, which was taken similar to Amy's experience with the Kraken team. We had a women's Voyageur team that met us, or that we kind of came upon at this very beautiful moment. And, you know, the picture of course doesn't do it justice, but one of the things that the Yukon race has just really highlighted to me is how we really are in the right place at the right time, and how if we just pause to kind of believe that or admit that that might be true, there's so much beauty. And this really captures how even through all the suffering, even through all the struggle, in that kind of taking that breath, it's like we're exactly where we need to be and who we need to be in this moment. And so I'm sure that, you know, everyone listening to this has had moments like that, because you're people that love to be outside, and that's often an experience that'll lead to that feeling. But that's part of why this race is so special to me, is I don't only get to experience that myself, but Heidi and I share that moment. So we've had times in the boat on the Yukon where we've just gone like, that sunset was for us. We had a moment in some of those rock cliff faces where Heidi just went, hey, what's that? And we both looked up at the same time, and we were directly under a family of mountain goats, probably 20 feet, more than that, up the rocks from us. So there's just this experience of being exactly where you need to be when you're there, and getting the beauty of that moment. So the other big kind of takeaway that I've learned about with being on a team, and just in our experience on the Yukon, is we've started together. So all of our preparation, like we're in communication, we care deeply about each other. Heidi's in the hospital with me, right? We start together. This is us at the beginning of our 2018 race, and this is at the finish line. And just kind of to lighten it up again here, we finished together. And if you look in the very far right-hand corner of your screen, that's the plastic bag, the garbage bag that someone had to give me because of my assless chaps. After Heidi had already been, you know, sufficiently encouraged and congratulated and loved by my parents. I finally got out of the boat, and there it is. So, oh, okay. So just kind of sum it up, we told you, why did we decide to do that? What is it like to do it itself? Oh my gosh, we can't believe we did it. And it was amazing. And we are very excited that we are going to be competing in the Yukon 1000 race. So we thought, Dawson City was awesome. We loved it. It was like heaven, as Emily showed us, but we thought we'd kind of see more of the Yukon River. Heidi, did you have any finishing thoughts?
No, I think that was really great, Brooke. And yeah, looking forward to the Yukon 1000 next year.
Awesome, thanks.
Thank you, guys. That was really lovely. And thank you so much for sharing your struggles too. And thank you for Brooke for sharing your, the emotions that come into it and just our mental health and everything. It can be such a struggle, and it's such a strength to be aware and to really work with it. And then having a teammate that's so supportive. And Emily, thank you for sharing your story too. All of our stories are just, if anything, I wanted to, emphasize to folks that, this is possible for people to do, and to dig deep. And the experience is different depending on how you want to go about it. And part of I think we all have a similar depth of value and whatnot to that experience with the Yukon. That brought us together. And I know when you talk about moments, before I saw you guys, I came across you, Brooke and Heidi, on the Yukon in 2019 when we met up. My rudder cable, I stopped because my rudder cable had stretched out over Lake Labarge, because Lake Labarge was so worked up, and I was using a cable that was a fabric cable, which now I wish I had a steel cable, but now I don't wish that, because then I think if my cable hadn't done that, I would have never met up with you guys. And so there's these moments that I often think about things like this. I'm like, wow, if that would not have happened, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. We wouldn't have had that time on the river and really connected. And that to me was a huge gift. And same with you, Em. 2017, it was such a gift to be able to share my experiences with you, and then just watching you come across was awesome. So I have some questions for you guys. There's a question related to support. We're gonna go for another, I hope everybody bears with us. We're gonna go probably for another 10 minutes and just answer some questions. Support. Emily, there was a question specifically about what support did you have? And did Emily have a support person for the Yukon River Quest? And I'd like Brooke and Heidi, you to talk about who your support was, because we really didn't get too much into that. And I know I mentioned my niece was, but support is a big deal. Even though it's that one time at the halfway point, you want somebody who has it down, right? Who has down what you need to do. You only have those 7 hours, and the idea is for you to max out your rest, right? So Emily, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was really, really lucky. My friend that I met doing the Cal 100, Tom Bilioni, he's the one the devil that sent me that email and started the whole thing. And so when I said I would do it, he's like, well, if you do it, I'll help you. I'll be your support person. And I'm like, I didn't really understand exactly what that meant, because I didn't really truly know where the damn Yukon was. I thought it was like Alaska, honestly. I just knew that it was pretty and I was going. So when he said he would do it, I'm like, I did know that he was a racer, which is critical. And people are like, oh, is your family going to help you? And it's just, that's not the right, I mean, you guys were lucky because your parents were racers, but I really think that in a thing like that, you need people that know exactly what's going on and can get you through CarMax. I mean, that is life-saving. And how to manage you when you're kind of getting all. So he was my support both years, and it was just a gift.
Yeah,
And you guys,
I do want to say something, and I have a feeling Heidi's maybe thinking the same thing I'm thinking right now. Last year, an ex-boyfriend of mine was part of our support group. And what Emily said is right. You need people who are dialed in and who know what's up, because it's a hard job. Speaking as someone who did it for 2 years as well, and I actually did it for 2 teams the second year, which was it's a lot. Like you're managing so many logistics. You want to make sure that you're exactly right about what the team needs, following their specifications. So Heidi and I, you know, before the race, we're prepping documents of like, at this time, this is what I want. This is the drink you need to mix for me when I get off. Like, this is, you know, the clothing, we're all bagged and packed and written out for what we need. But this ex of mine had done the push off for us. So we mentioned, you know, there's one person who pushes you off, and it was abysmal. I think Heidi's shoes ended up in the water. Like, it's the worst.
Yeah, and I just to add to that, my first year when I did the race with Kelly, so Steve Brooks' dad was in the race, and he was so much faster than we were. That he was in a C4 that year. He was about 7 hours ahead of me, so I got to see him heading out as we came in. And Steve just is great at knowing what to say when and how to say it, and just getting to connect with him for that moment, and for him to give me that little pep talk was so important and meaningful. So I think also, yeah, having the support crew, and Steve's good at coaching other people, like, okay, you can't get them too hyped up, and like, this is the information they're going to want. So I think telling them in advance what you need them to tell you also to get you in the right frame of mind is really helpful. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, I know I've had different, you know, support, and I tried to do it without support, and that was like a huge mistake. And I've hired support too. I must say my niece was an incredible support. I also found it really helped to have somebody who really kind of loves the outdoors and doesn't mind being in like remote wilderness. And because there's some, you know, they got to do that drive, and can be some challenging moments. And you know, and she saw me, you know, she thinks of me as like the strongest person probably in the world, and in some ways. And then she saw me really vulnerable. Like, she saw me really and I needed her help. Like, I was broken. I was like, I just, you know, and she at times be like, I don't know what to do. What do you want me to do? And she was such a trooper. So yeah. But having those lists all laid out and everything really efficient makes such a big difference. Because they're there at CarMax, but they're also there at Dawson, you know, to help you clean out the boat and do all these different things.
Yeah,
another
the race ends.
Oh,
the race ends, and then I don't know what happens to the boat, because you go to bed. It's amazing.
Yeah, I know.
We're princesses, like, and everything's always exactly where it needs to be when we come back. So it's a really important job, and it takes a lot of time commitment for them to learn how to do everything properly. Even like tying the spray deck down onto the boat. If they're not a paddler, they would have no clue, and they have to, if they're willing, they have to take the time to learn all of that.
Yeah, it's a pretty big job, you know, for the most part. And it's a community, because they help like other support people help. I just see this real camaraderie among the support at CarMax and even at the end. And yeah, it's pretty amazing. So there was a question here related to how come the registration is so competitive. And I can say from my perspective that I remember the days when we signed up we would wait until like May to sign up for the Yukon. That doesn't exist anymore. I think, I know in 2005, I saw the field go from like 30 people in 2003 to 50 in 2004 to 70 in 2005. And then after that, I was shocked in 2017 when I went back to do it, that November 1 hit, and I thought we had this time, because I was kind of like, you know, we can. And then I started seeing it get filled and filled and filled and filled and filled. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to get filled up in like a day. And I think it just became really popular, particularly with like the adventure racers.
It's especially hard for solo. because there's a finite number, you know, Amy, because when you did, I mean,
Right, right.
there's
Yeah,
a
there's like
limited number.
25.
They limit, yeah, there's a limited number for how many solos. So it doesn't matter if you're a solo canoe, K1, or a sub, there's just a handful of them. So I mean, we're literally at midnight or whatever time, like trying to log on. And I mean, it's sold out. I think the solo class in the 2 years I did, it sold out within like 48 hours.
What's the limit on SUP? Because there is a special limit with SUP, right? Opposed to even.
I don't think so. I think we were lumped into the whole category. We were
I
just
lumped into the whole 25. Okay.
as I remember it, yeah, we were just counted as a solo vessel.
So,
and I think the other thing is that it's so addicting that like probably at least a third of the roster are repeaters. So once you do it once, everybody keeps coming back.
yeah, they do definitely. There was one last question that we'll do, and then I know we'll start to wrap up. What adventures do you guys have next? And what is your next big adventure? And I know you guys, it's the Yukon 1000, and how are you planning and training, and Brooke and Heidi, for that?
I'm just answering Melissa's questions here.
Okay.
But I'm here. So
Okay.
I'm still here. Yeah, Heidi, go for it.
Yeah, so we were supposed to do the 1000 this year as well, but it was pushed because of COVID. So the Yukon 1000, we start at the same point. So it also starts in Whitehorse, but it's 1000 miles. So we keep going into the Arctic Circle, into Alaska. And so we have no support crew for this race. And it's structured, so there are no geographic mandatory stops, rather they're timed. So I think we have to be off the water from 11 p.m. until 5 a.m. every night, and you can take longer. So it will add complications because we won't have a support crew to handle things for us. We have to have all of our gear in advance, start looking at the maps to figure out where there might be potential campsites in advance of the time we want to be off the water. So it's a lot more, we have to rely on ourselves and each other a lot more, because we don't have that crew. So I think just really discussing all of our options and different scenarios through in advance is really important to make sure we're on the same page, because it's tough to make decisions when you're really sleep deprived and exhausted. So yeah, and learning our maps a lot more because we're seeing new sections of the river.
Right, that's really cool. That's really cool there. And Emily, are you gonna go back? And
I'd like to, yeah, I definitely am going back. I mean, the addiction is like you learn something every year, and it's like you just want to go back and like see what else you can do, and just go back to the place. I mean, the second year, I mean, the first year I was so done and so tired, and I woke up the next morning, I'm like, definitely going back. I mean, it's just, yeah, so I'll definitely go back to the Yukon. And I want to find something on the Mississippi River. I'm from New Orleans. So I'd like to find some way to, I don't know exactly what, but something to do with the Mississippi.
yeah, and I'm actually planning, John, Diane are planning to do it in a canoe sometime, the Yukon River Quest, and
That'll be a strong team.
yeah, I've never really paddled a canoe before, so, but I learned how to paddle a kayak. So yeah, no, I'd love to. It just I kind of want to mix it up, and do it in different ways and whatnot, which would be really great.
One of the women who is watching this webinar that was here as an attendee, Esther, she's done the race. She's the first woman to do it solo canoe, and she's done it in everying, I think, but a voyageur. So yeah, there's
that's cool.
People, that's the
Ester's
other thing.
amazing. Hi, Esther.
The desire.
So I have one
back.
more question for you guys, and then we're gonna go. For each of you, what are 3 non-negotiable things that you take on the River Quest with you? It could be related to food. It could be related to just what are like 3 top things. Okay, Brooke, you start.
My paddle, because it's so lightweight. Oh my gosh. Heidi, which, haha, I get to say that one first. And sunscreen, like especially like lip
Oh,
balm
yeah.
and lip balm.
All right, Heidi.
I guess mine's more planning things, but number one, I like to schedule everything so I don't make any decisions. So I schedule how often I drink water, how often I eat something, and that's really important for me. Discussing with my partner, like what are our hard yeses and hard nos, so we don't have to make those decisions when we're not doing well. And then having treats to motivate you. So for me, that's like having a can of coffee and I'm gonna drink that in 5 hours and I can look forward to that for 5 hours. Or having our music and we only use that when we need a little boost. So little whatever works to motivate you is important.
Yeah. All right, Emily.
I will say my cashmere hat. It's ugly. My kids think it's horrendous. It's like a longshoreman hat, but it's soft and it's warm. And in the first year it was dry, but it kept me warm. In the second year when it rained, you guys were in that same storm. It was horrendous. So I would say my hat, even in the rain, I was happy with my hat and my rain gear. That's based on that storm as well. I have a jacket, that purple jacket I had at the end for sure. And then I have some pants. And I think that the best thing, the motivation thing, it's River Burgers. They're basically McDonald's hamburgers. And I realized, it's funny. I would make these deals. Like I'm the meanest person ever. I would make these deals. Like you have to maintain this speed for this many hours or this many miles. And if you don't, then you have to go more. But I try to figure, cold River Burger is not really, in a good day, they're not good hot. Probably not really, but when they're cold, not so much. So I was like trying to figure out how to warm it up. If you stick it in your PFD, it'll warm up. And so you can't eat the whole thing. So with the end of the race, I think it was the first year, someone comes up to me and they give me a big hug and they're like, what is that?
I remember that.
Yeah, and I pulled a hamburger out of my chi-chis. It was really an exciting moment. I'm like, oh my God. But yeah, so shout out to McDonald's.
Oh, that's awesome. I would say for me, it's comfort. I at least take one extra seat pad. My posterior is like my major part that I think. Also, I always take like variable food. I get tired of sweet. By the time I get to Carmax, I don't want any more sweet. I just want salt, salty. And I remember eating fries the rest of the race after Coffee Creek. Fries were all I could. I was like trying to keep up with this Voyager, and I'd grab a fry. It just kept me going. Yeah, my other thing would be mantras. Having just things I can like, I do these. I'd have these like things I do like, the Mississippi. I do like a Mississippi song while I am paddling, and it just helped keep me going. But yeah, it's amazing out there. And thank you guys so much. And now I'm going to turn it over to John. And thank you, attendees, for staying longer. I really appreciate it. All right.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks so much. Thanks, Brooks. Thanks, Heidi. Thanks, Emily. Thanks, everybody. We didn't get to all the questions. There were a few questions that came in about food systems. I think Emily wrapped that up with River Burgers. But if anybody wants more information on that, they can email me directly, john@riversforchange. I can talk to you about calories and how you burn them, how to replace them. And yeah, I've learned from Amy, I've learned from Emily. I'm looking forward to learning from Brooke and Heidi on that.
I think test things. You got to test
Yes.
to the nth degree.
River Burgers, by the way, are not a nutritional system. That is pure motivation. Just to be really clear, you can't do that race on a River Burger. That is purely for entertainment value.
But like Amy says, train like you're gonna race. And in the same thought, you don't have to race all the time. You can just go on the river and have a good time. You can go on the river for a float or a cleanup. You can do 10 or 15 or 21 days on the Grand and not race your heart out. At the same time, everything that we're talking about here, you could apply this to the California River Quest. You could apply it to the Yukon 1000, the Missouri 340, the Everglades Challenge, the Texas Water Safari. There's a lot of long distance, stupidly long distance races that you could do these to, where you get to the point where you think that, oh, 50 miles, that's just a sprint. Yeah, we can do that. I want to remind everybody here that August 30th, we're going to be talking about something that is not race oriented. It is a river cleanup, a big river cleanup in the terms of dams coming down on the Klamath River in California. Kristen Wilson is going to be the host for that. She is I'm going to try and get this right, geofluvial morphologist. I'm not sure I got all those syllables in the correct order there. She works with the Nature Conservancy here in California. Whip smart and amazing paddler and a distance paddler and a sprinter all in one. And she's going to talk to us about what's going on with the Klamath. I look forward to that. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for joining us. I'm John with Rivers for Change, waving goodbye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.